Hello folks, so we're going to teach more about shapes in Illustrator. We're going to continue on with day 2 of Illustrator and learn more about shapes in their pure form. So what we're going to talk about a lot today is the flexibility that Illustrator has with pretty much anything you draw with an Illustrator. It is not set in stone. Things in Illustrator can be changed on the fly. They can be tweaked, they can be done like that. Photoshop, on the other hand, does not have that flexibility. Illustrator does. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that today. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to start out with the pen tool, kind of like a recap of what the pen tool is all about. So up in the corner, I went to the pen, and as you remember last time, it's kind of like a dot-to-dot tool in a sense. So if I click and then I move this around, you'll see that I placed a point. If I go here and I place a point, it does a straight line from point to point. If I go to another one and I were to click, hold, drag, you'll see that what it does is it creates a curve that goes around. So it's like these particular handles can be moved, and it can be lengthened, can change however it needs to be. Now, anything that is done with this, you have to understand that when you create lines like this, you're creating open lines. They are not shapes. And in order to make it a shape, you have to close it, which means you have to go back to where you began, get that little circle on the cursor, and click. That will close the shape. So now you currently have a closed shape here. All right. So with that, what we can do is I'm going to go up to my selection tool, which you remember what I said last time. Selection tool selects things in a whole, not as parts. So if I select the black arrow and I go and click, you'll see that I actually can select the whole shape, and it has this box surrounding around it. If I go to my white arrow, which is the direct selection tool, and I just click on a point, you'll see that it does not create a box around it, because what it's doing is it's selecting things as parts. So if I were to go here to this particular point and I click, hold, drag, you can see that it actually moves it around. I can also go to a certain handle. As you see that this has created a handle here, I can click, hold, drag that, and manipulate that one as well. Now, another thing you can do is in a path, what you could do with the cursor, you move the cursor in there, and you were to click, hold, drag, you'll see that what you're doing is manipulating that curve. I can go to any one of these, like in between these 2 points, and click, hold, drag, and it moves those 2 points that are connected. Same thing here. So you can see it acts a lot like Play-Doh in a sense, where it's like basically clay that you're molding into a shape that you want. I have seen over the years many students who have used a pen tool, and this is one of the things that they tend to do. Is they want to create a circle, and what they do is they do this. And as you can see, it is not coming out the way it's supposed to. All right, and then they get to the back. All right, that's a circle in a sense. So in here, what we want to do is we want to create like a circle. So as you can see, we can create something along those lines. This is not a perfect circle. I'll show you some of those here as we go. But you can kind of see that you can create a much more smooth type of round shape. All right. So hopefully you've got all that. And that's the pen tool. All right, so some of the shapes that are also option, you don't have to use a pen tool for everything. If you go over here, and there is a rectangle tool. As you can see that there is a rectangle tool there. If you click and hold on it, you got a rectangle tool, an ellipse tool, a polygon tool, a star tool, a line segment tool, and a rounded rectangle tool. So we're going to talk about some of these as we go. So with the rectangle tool, what we can do is we have the option of we can put down a shape in two different ways. The first way is just to click. What that does is it gives us a dialog box which gives us a width and height. So it's like right now it says width is 1.3889, and what we can do is we can type in anything we want, like 4 by 4. Now it does default to inches. You can do several other things as well, like if you wanted, necessarily 23 centimeters or something like that. You could type in 23 space cm, and it should convert it to inches, which you can kind of see there. All right. Now I can go ahead and hit click, and you can see that it puts in a perfect square that is 4 inches by 4 inches, just like so. The other way is to just click and drag. Click, hold, drag. As you can see, I'm creating this on the fly. I have not let go of the mouse button. It's creating a kind of like a rectangle here, or if I hold down the shift key, it'll create a perfect square, no matter what size you want it. So we have that. And none of these shapes are applied until I actually let go of the mouse. Now, if I want a perfect rectangle, I would have to let go of the mouse button first, not the shift key. Remember, the shift key will scale things in proportion. So if I were to let go of the shift key first, you see that I can accidentally move it and it's no longer a perfect square. Now if I hold down the shift key and I let go of the mouse first, and then it applies that perfect square to it. All right. Hopefully you got all that. Now again, you'll see that with this you have these particular handles. They're little white boxes, we call them handles. If you click, hold, and drag on those handles, you can see that you can actually stretch, compress. If you move outside of it, you'll see that the arrow turns into a double arrow, which we can click, hold, drag, and create a rotation, rotate around it. Now there are these little circles that are in the middle of these, or in each of these corners. Those corners are called radius corners. So if I were to click, hold, drag, and pull in, you'll see that it creates a rounded corner. If I push in towards the corner, it will go more a corner piece. So if I want to round them, I can do that. Now, if I were to use the white arrow, per se, and I click on a corner and all the other ones are white, you're left with one circle. I can click, hold, and drag that one and create a one rounded corner on that. I could do the same thing over here. Click it first, go to the corner radius option, and I can create two rounded corners in one box. All right. Hopefully you got all that. All right, I'm going to delete that. All right, I'm going to go to my ellipse tool now. If I go ahead and click on that one, the ellipse tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hold down shift, click, hold, drag, and it will create a perfect circle. Now, if I were to basically just not hold down shift, you can see I can create different ellipses for it. You can also just click, and what that does again gives you a dialog box which is much like the square one, or rectangle one. It gives you width and height, but instead what it's doing is it's giving you the width and height of a circle for this one. So if I hit OK, it puts that in. All right, pretty simple, not too complicated. Then we get into the, I'm going to skip down to where it says rounded rectangle tool. If I click that and I were to just click, you'll see that what happens is I get a width and height and a corner radius, which gives me that corner radius. We talked about that a little bit with the rectangle. It had those little round circles in each of the corners. Now we have the option of width and height and a corner radius with it. All right. Now if I hit that, you'll see that it already creates a box with the rounded corners. All right. Now I can do a drag and drop, or like basically a drag in place. So if I go ahead and click hold drag, you'll see that what I'm doing is it's creating a box with the rounded corners. In order to, what I can do is what if I wanted these corners to be bigger per se? All right, there are some keyboard shortcuts as you are drawing certain things. So like here is rounded corners. If I go ahead and use the up arrow on your keyboard, you'll see that basically the rounded corners are going more rounded. If I use the down arrow, you'll see that they're becoming less rounded as I'm drawing this. Now I have not let go of the mouse button yet. So it's basically up, down arrow keys, and that will basically give you the your rounded corners. Now if I let go, then it will apply it. Now, the beauty of that is that there was a time when Illustrator did not have these little round circles in each of the corners. So in order to create a rounded corner rectangle, you had to do it this way, up, down arrow keys. But now you just have the option, oh, I want it a little bit more. You can just pull them in and you can create more of a rounded corner on each of them. All right. Moving on, we're going to go to our polygon tool. So the polygon tool, if I go ahead and just click, you'll see that I get what is called a radius. Radius means that it's going to come out from the center around in a circular pattern. So like the radius here is like 0.66944 inches, and it gives you the amount of sides. You can give it as many sides as you want, but you can only go down to 3 as far as the minimum amount of sides. And, if it goes any more than that, then it's just a line. But with 3, it creates a triangle. So if I go ahead and hit OK, you'll see that it does place that triangle. Now there is a click and drag option. If I go ahead and click and drag out, you'll see it's creating your triangle with the 3 sides. Now, if I were to do the up arrow key, it'll add more sides to it. The down arrow key will give you less sides for it. So like here, if you go up, we create more sides. If we go down, we create less sides. And then when you're at the sides you want, just go ahead and let go of the mouse, and it will go ahead and apply those. After you apply it, you cannot add sides to it. It is, it's just the way it is for placing it in. All right. So kind of moving on, now we go to the star tool. Go to the star tool, and we just go ahead and click. You're going to have 2 things, radius 1, radius 2, and the number of points that are being utilized here. So radius 1 refers to the inside of the star from a center point. Radius 2 refers to the outside points of the star. So I'll demonstrate here. If I go ahead and hit points, hit OK, you'll see that what it does is it creates a star. Now the center point goes to these inside points around here, which are your radius 1. The outside points are referred to as your radius 2 options, or points. So now if I go ahead and click, hold, drag, there are some little tricks that you can do with it. So with the star here, if I were to do up, down arrow keys, you see up arrow keys adds points. If I go down, it takes away points up until a triangle. All right, so if I add more points to this, and I just pull out, you can kind of see that it creates a bigger star. Now, if I push in and make the inside radius smaller, and then I hold down the Control key on a Windows platform, I think it's I think it's Command key on a Mac. You pull the Control key out on a Windows platform. You see you pull that second radius out. And then you let go, and then you got a star much like that. All right. Hopefully that's got everybody okay. All right. So those are some of the shape options that are here. Line segments, what it does is just basically creates a line. Click, hold, drag, creates a line. Not too hard. You can do that with the pen tool. All right. Now there are some options that we want to kind of explore here. If you go to your rectangle tool, and I'm going to click, hold, drag to create two rectangles here. You want two rectangles. I'm going to go to my black arrow, and I'm going to click on one. And as I explored last time, we want to add some kind of color to this. So I'm going to go to my fill area and double click it. And in my fill area, I just want to add a color. And I'm just going to add blue here and hit OK. And I'm going to take the stroke off. So I'm going to turn that off. If I go to my other square, I'm going to double click the fill area, give it a red color. And I'm going to turn the stroke off in there too. So I should have two shapes. It's important for this little segment that I actually want them overlapping. That is important for what I'm going to be doing here. So I've got the blue one overlapping the red one. It does not matter what color they are. All right, for this particular thing, if you're following along, what I want to do is I'm going to show you that there are certain elements within Illustrator that you can use that are very, very basic and have been around with Illustrator for a long, long time. Now, if I go up to Window, there is a palette that I open up a lot. One is called the Pathfinder. So if I go to Window, go to Pathfinder, click that, you'll see that what I have is the Pathfinder palette. And these are split into two patterns. One is shape modes and one is pathfinders. This one right here at the very end, I think needs to be up in shape modes, but they put the expand button there, which I don't really even use. So, you know, there's this one that needs to be up in here, but we're going to talk about some of these. So the important thing is you need to select both shapes, and you can do that a couple different ways. If you are out here outside the shape and click, hold, drag, you can select both shapes. Or you can click on one, hold down the shift key, and click on the other, and then you have both selected. Either option works. I tend to always, you'll find me doing this quite often because I've been doing it for a long, long time. And I find that's the preferred method for me. All right, so I have both of these shapes made up, or selected here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of these shape modes. All right, this one is called Unite. If I go ahead and click on that, you'll see what it does is it combines both shapes together into one shape. But it takes on the characteristics of the shape that's on top of the other one. If you remember, the blue was on top of the red. That's why it's blue all the way around, because it's the top layer. All right, I'm going to undo. If I go up to Edit, Undo, Add. All right, we're back to this where we were before. All right, this next one called Minus Front, if I go ahead and click on that one, you'll see that the top object took a bite out of the object below it. So any common areas were deleted from that bottom shape, as you can see there. So now I'm going to go up to Edit, Undo. And along those lines, I am going to skip these two and come over to this very end one, because there's one called Minus Back. If I click on that, you'll see what it did is it took a bite out of the object on top of it. So the bottom object came like took a bite out of any common area of the object on top. Again, undo. And then this one here, intersect. If I go ahead and click on that, any common or overlapping areas are kept, anything else is subtracted. Edit, undo. And I'm going to go to this one, exclude, which basically any common areas are excluded, and then anything outside of that common overlapping area is kept. So you have this particular thing, and it is basically takes on the characteristics of the other. All right. Again, undo. All right. So I have that. All right. So I'm not really going to talk too much about these because I very rarely will use this stuff. There are maybe a couple of them that I want to kind of like show. If I have both of these selected, there's one that's called divide. If I go ahead and click divide, you'll see that really doesn't look like anything happened until I go up to object, ungroup. So I choose ungroup, and then I deselect it. And then I go back here and I click hold drag, and you'll notice that it did divide the shapes into three different shapes for that one. Now I have to undo a few times. Undo, 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 and I'm back to where I was. All right. Hopefully you guys got that. All right. So how would you use these in a particular setting? Like, what would be a reason for you doing any of this stuff? Well, here's an option. So like here, let's say I use this ellipse. I go ahead and use an ellipse like that. And I go up to edit, copy, edit, paste in front. What that's going to do is it's going to copy the object, and it's going to paste another object exactly in the same position on top of the other one. So paste in front, I'm going to use my arrow keys to kind of like move this down. Now I'm going to go ahead and use my rectangle tool for this. And I'm going to come up here, and what's nice is that I have this kind of like guide thing that's being popping up. If I see that, I can go ahead and start. So I'm going to click, hold, drag until it gets to that other area. It kind of like snaps into place. Until I cross. So I have that. Now, if I were to use this, let's say, and I select that, and I use the unite, it combines both shapes together. Still, like, why would I want to use that? Well, I'm going to turn down and make this a little darker. And I'm going to go to this top one, object, arrange, bring to front. What does it kind of look like? All right, it kind of looks like a cylinder in a sense. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it in front. I'm going to create another thing. All right, so I'm going to use this. I'm going to copy this one. And I'm going to go ahead and paste it in front. Bring this down kind of like that. All right. And I'm going to use this rectangle. I'm going to do kind of like the same thing as I did before. Except I'm not going to go all the way over because I want to show you something else here. All right. Now for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these two, combine them, and I'm going to select this one now, so both these objects, and I'm going to go ahead and use a minus back. And what that did was it took a bite out of the top here, and then I'm going to use my rectangle, make a box that's kind of like overlapping the other one. And then I'm going to go ahead and use the minus front. What that did was it took that, and we can make that kind of like a grayish white, more or less. And now it looks like you may have like a label on a can or something like that. So you can see that using the shapes, and it's not necessarily, I didn't use the pen tool for any of that stuff. and it can always be manipulated in some way or fashion. So shapes are very flexible to use in Illustrator. So one of the last things I do want to show you is, again, type. Now, I'm going to show type later on, but type can be considered as a shape. So like here, if I go ahead and click, and I just type out my name, and then I choose over here where it says character. If you do not have that, you can go up to Window, and you can go to Type and Character. All right. Mine has it like that by default, but I'm going to go to where it says I don't even have Futura in here. I'm going to just use this one for now, and I'm going to basically give it a higher type size. And if I go to my black arrow, you can see that here we have these handles, much like you did with the shape. If I go ahead and click or drag, you can see that I can distort and do all that. If I hold down the Shift key, it'll scale in proportion. All right, so with this, what I need to do is, I said, type can be considered a shape. And what I need to do is there are certain steps in order to do that. So like here, it has one line. If I double click on it, you can change whatever letters you want to change. That is considered live type. It is not a shape. So in order to make a shape, you have to go up to Type. Create outlines is the option, where it does convert it to a shape. But I have one more step. Object, ungroup, and then deselect it. And then I have this option of moving each one of these around, much like a shape. If I double click, it doesn't allow me to kind of like change the type. It is no longer type, it is shapes. So I could essentially take a arrow or pen tool, run it through like this, create this obscure shape here, hold down Shift, select the E, and then use the minus front, and then you have that option as well. All right. So hopefully that gives you a pretty good overview about what shapes are allowed to do within Illustrator. We're going to show you more as we progress. But really, I'm kind of like showing you guys the basics for now, because I don't want to overload you. This is enough to kind of get you started. All right. So until next time, see ya.